The magnificent glass doors of Westmore Funeral Home swung open with such force that several mourners turned in alarm. 9-year-old Omar Parker stood there, his small chest heaving, dark eyes wild with determination. In his arms, he cradled a 6-month-old baby girl wrapped in a pale pink blanket, her curious eyes taking in the somber gathering. "That man was my father, too," Omar shouted, his voice echoing through the hushed funeral parlor. The elegant room fell silent. Dozens of faces, mostly white, mostly wealthy, stared at the small black boy in his wrinkled button-up shirt and 2 large dress pants. The closed mahogany casket at the front of the room seemed to loom larger in the uncomfortable silence. What will the widow do when faced with this explosive truth? Stay with African Legacy Tales for the dramatic twist. Candace Remple, the widow, dressed immaculately in black designer mourning clothes, gripped the arm of her adult son as her eyes locked with Omar's. The boy took 3 steps forward, still holding the baby protectively against his chest. "James Remple was my father," Omar repeated, softer now, but no less certain. "And he's Joyce's father, too." He nodded down at the baby in his arms. Candace Remple swayed slightly. "Impossible," she whispered. But there was something in her eyes, a recognition, perhaps, or fear, that suggested she wasn't entirely surprised. Omar's mother, Melanie Parker, appeared behind him, her face a mixture of grief and resolve. "I'm sorry it has to be like this," she said to the room at large. "But James made me promise. He wanted his children to know each other." Candace stared at the baby, studying her features. The child had James's distinctive hazel eyes, a feature so unique that Candace had always commented on how their son had inherited them. Now she was looking at those same eyes in a baby she'd never seen before. "DNA," Candace said, the single word falling from her lips as she collapsed into a nearby chair. 3 months earlier, James Remple had sat in his Mercedes outside Melanie's modest apartment building, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. The cancer diagnosis was still fresh: pancreatic, stage 4, maybe 3 months to live. The successful real estate developer had faced countless challenges in his life, but none like this. "You have to tell her," Melanie said from the passenger seat. "Your wife deserves to know about us, about the children." James looked away. 14 years, Mel, 14 years I've kept you and Omar separate from my other life. And now, Joyce." He glanced at the rearview mirror, checking on the sleeping baby in the car seat. "How do I tell Candace that not only have I had a long-term relationship with another woman, but I have 2 children she knows nothing about?" "Because you're dying," Melanie said, her voice breaking. "And I won't have your children growing up without their rightful inheritance, without knowing their brother and their family history." James nodded slowly. "I'll find a way. I'll change my will. I'll make sure you're both taken care of." "It's not just about money," Melanie insisted. "It's about belonging. Omar deserves to know his half-brother, and Joyce deserves a chance to know her father's family." "I'll figure something out," James promised. "Just give me time." But time was the one thing James Remple didn't have. Now, as Omar stood in the funeral home with Joyce in his arms, the weight of James' unfulfilled promise hung in the air. Candace's son, Andrew Remple, 32 years old and the spitting image of his father, stepped forward, placing himself between his mother and the unexpected visitors. "This is inappropriate," Andrew said coldly. "I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but my father was a respected businessman and a faithful husband." Melanie reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "James gave me this before he died. He wanted me to open it only if he didn't get the chance to tell you himself." Andrew snatched the envelope from her hand and tore it open. His eyes scanned the handwritten letter, his expression shifting from anger to shock. "It's Dad's handwriting," he said quietly to his mother. Candace reached for the letter with trembling hands. As she read, tears began to stream down her face. The letter confirmed everything: James's relationship with Melanie, Omar's birth 9 years ago, and Joyce's existence. How will this fractured family face the truth of James's double life? Keep watching African Legacy Tales for the emotional resolution. 3 days later, Omar sat in a hospital room, watching as Candace, her face bruised but her dignity intact, held Joyce in her arms. Melanie sat nearby, smiling at the unexpected tableau. "She has his eyes," Candace said softly, tracing a finger along Joyce's cheek. "I always thought it was just Andrew who inherited them, but now I see them in both his son and his daughter." The door opened, and Andrew entered, followed by Detective Rivera. His face was somber, but there was a lightness in his eyes that Omar hadn't seen before. "It's done," Andrew announced. "The DA is filing charges against Jonathan and Vincent Castellano. With the evidence from Dad's drive and their attempted kidnapping, they'll be behind bars for decades." "And Riverview Tower?" Candace asked. "Construction has been halted pending a complete structural review," Rivera confirmed. "James' documentation was thorough. He likely saved hundreds of lives." A comfortable silence fell over the room, broken only when Andrew cleared his throat awkwardly. "I've been thinking," he said, addressing Melanie, "about what happens next. The will is clear about Omar and Joyce's inheritance, but there's the matter of housing, schooling." He hesitated. "The estate is large enough for all of us, if you'd consider it." Melanie's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You want us to live with you?" "It makes sense," Andrew continued. "Joyce and Omar would have space to grow up, security, good schools." He glanced at Candace, who nodded encouragingly. "We're family, after all. Dad wanted us to know each other. This seems like a good start." "What about the company?" Omar asked. "Dad left us shares." Andrew smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his usually serious face. "I was hoping you might be interested in learning the business." "Not right away, of course. You have school, and being a kid comes first." "But someday, partners?" Omar nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He would have liked that. "There's something else," Candace added. "James' letter mentioned bearer bonds in a safe deposit box." She reached for a folder on her bedside table. "We've retrieved them, $3 million, as he said. I've spoken with Harold, and we've set up a foundation in James' name, dedicated to building safety oversight and supporting families affected by corporate negligence." "The James Remple Legacy Foundation," Andrew explained, turning Dad's final act into something that helps others. Melanie wiped away a tear. "He would have loved that, using the money to save lives instead of being forced to risk them." As they continued discussing plans for the future, Omar moved to the window, looking out at the city skyline where his father's buildings stood as monuments to his public life. But now he understood that James Remple's true legacy wasn't in steel and glass. It was in the family he'd created, divided by his choices, but united by his final wish for them to find each other. A soft hand on his shoulder drew his attention. Andrew stood beside him, following his gaze to the horizon. "Pretty amazing view," his brother said. "Dad used to say that buildings are just buildings," Omar replied. "It's the people inside them that matter." Andrew nodded thoughtfully. "Smart man, our father. Complicated, but smart. Do you think we can really do this?" Omar asked. "Be a family?" "I don't know," Andrew admitted. "But I think it's worth trying." From across the room, Joyce let out a happy gurgle, drawing their attention back to where Candace was now handing the baby to Melanie. The two women, widow and partner, strangers just days ago, exchanged a look of mutual understanding. "Family is family," Candace said, echoing her words from the funeral, "no matter what." As Omar watched them together, his mother, his half-brother, his baby sister, and the stepmother he never knew he